Hello. Hello, welcome everyone. It's as always a pleasure to see the room practically full. Um, so today we are starting the lecture series of the Graphically Sava lecture series of this course. We're Giliane Cachin. So I won't introduce her because she do it just in a few minutes, but just to announce you that we will have like 5 more lectures during the rest of the course. Today we're starting with Gillian. In February we'll have Samar Macaroon from Pentagram, the last partner that drive the group. Then in March we will have the visit of Julia Bourne, and then in April we will have Julie Peters from Belgium, and we will close the lecture series with Annette Lenz. Okay, so welcome, and I hope that we see in all the 5 lectures here every month. And please welcome Giliane Cachin.
Hi everyone, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to be able to give this lecture. I'm also a little bit stressed. I didn't expect the room to be that full, but I'm more excited than stressed, so that's cool. Yeah, before starting, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. So I was born in Lausanne. It's a city in the French part of Switzerland. So my mother tongue is French. And after the mandatory school, I studied in 3 different art schools. I studied 1 year in the photography school of Vevey. It's also a small town in the French part. Then I went to study graphic design for 3 years in Geneva. And then I ended my studies with a bachelor in graphic design at ECAL. It's the art school of Lausanne. And when I was at ECAL, I got to know the studio Norm, which you maybe have heard about. And I knew their work already, but I got to know them, let's say, through a workshop. And I went to work for them right after my bachelor ended for 1 year and 4 months. And then I was also a bit assistant at ECAL during that time. But I wanted to know more about the type industry and the type field. Not that I ever saw myself as a type designer, but I was curious to hear and to get to know a bit this world. So I moved to Berlin and I worked for the type foundry Line 2, and its founder Cornel Windlin. And at this point we were in 2015, and I also got a prize, which is a Swiss Design Award, and it's a prize that is given to some design project, and that give the possibility to have usually money to kind of buy all the gears we need to set up our studio. But at that time we could also pick a residency in New York, so that's what I've done. I did this residency in New York, and after that I had the wish to start my own studio. I would even say I kind of started it in New York officially, but I didn't have enough job to live from that. So I wanted to move back to Switzerland, and I had the good news to see that the main office of Line 2 moved from Berlin to Zurich. So I moved to Zurich and I continued working for them for 2 years. Actually, mainly found different projects, but mainly on the website. And I think found with Jonathan Harris. I think he gave a lecture to you a few months ago or weeks ago. So he was the artistic director of the website with Cornel Windlin and Jörg Leni, but I was, let's say, the small hand, the one kind of like filling specimen page and things like that. and then like it was 2019, and I felt I started to get enough job to live from my studio. So that's what I did. I decided to only focus on my studio, and that's what I'm doing now. I still collaborate with Line 2 on very specific project, and I teach an editorial class at ECAL, the Art School of Lausanne, and I also teach type design in the Art School of Zurich, ZADK, with Marietta Höxter and David Keshavji. Maybe you know them. David Keshavji is the founder of, one of the founder of Maximage, MaxiType. So yeah, that was about my background. And tonight I'm very happy to be with you to talk about my practice and our practice as designer. and under the prism of restriction. So, yeah, I know that restriction can sound like a negative term, and in a way it is, but I would like to show through this talk how beneficial it can be um, for a designer to have a restriction, because we will automatically be as creative as we can in order to find our way around those restrictions. That's basically something I would like to talk about tonight. So what you see here is like a part of an interview from Manuel Krebs. Manuel Krebs is one of the founder of Norm, the studio I just told you about. And he wrote in 2017 in the Type journal, we try to avoid multiple choice because you have to choose too much. We feel a little bit lost this way. We think that it also helps to have restriction and narrow limitation in your work. We made this choice of working with restriction, and we found a lot of possibilities within. If you determine the field of work, you can create maximum effect with minimum means. So that's their way of working, and that's, I feel, also my way of working or of thinking. So I cannot agree more with what he wrote, because, yeah, he's talking about the fact that they feel lost when they don't have like a frame of work. And I would also agree. I feel sometimes I visualize those two kind of cylinder, those two spectrum. So one on the right very open and one very narrow. And I feel it's very hard when the cylinder is full open to find the right idea. It's very hard when a client comes to you and say, hey, actually, I want to do this book. Here is the content, but feel free to add content if you want. And by the way, budget, infinite, do whatever you want. Like, it's very hard to know how to start. Sometimes it's important, especially for self-initiated project or research project, to feel you have all the spectrum, all the windows open. But in our practice, in the daily life, when you get a lot of job, I think it can really be a help to feel you're solving a problem. And I feel we are more creative this way. When you have a special task, let's say, I don't know, someone tell you, hey, I need to print this book. I want to print it in risography with the printer in my basement, but I only have one ink. And then you start to think, okay, how can I play with this content in one ink? Suddenly I will start to automatically think, what are all the possibilities? And I will get more creative. As we know, we are not artists, right? We are designer, or I don't know if there is artist here, but I'm a designer. So if I imagine a bubble around artist and designer, the artist is responsible of the topic he chooses. It's really under his control. But for us, we have requests that come from outside, and we need to bring a solution. So in order to find this solution, we will be confronted to a few restrictions, or we can also talk about element of influence. It can be about a format, the budget, the context, the grid, program content. We will have to, yeah, as we said earlier, find our way around this. And let's start, yeah, maybe with the beginning. When do we accept a job? So there is a bit a saying in Switzerland, and maybe you have heard it here too, I don't know, which is that in order to say yes to a project, you need to feel at least two of these three components. So either it's a friend, and by friend, I mean, it can also be someone you know and respect, or you have a lot of freedom in the project, or it's interesting money-wise, not only for the money you get, but also for the money that can be injected in production. So you need to cross at least two of these three components. So let's say it's someone you respect, or it's a friend, and you have a lot of freedom, then that's maybe okay to give up a bit on the money aspect, or like to not have a huge production budget. If you have a lot of freedom and it's interesting in terms of money, that's okay if you have never heard about this person. And if it's a friend and it's interesting money-wise, then you can maybe give up a bit on the freedom. So there was a time that I didn't follow this, and I was happy not to have. And there was time I was like, why did I not follow this schema? I mean, we all know what it is to work sometimes for a family. This is the worst idea. You don't have that much freedom, no money, and it's just a friend or someone you know, and then it's just terrible. So let's say this is the first. If now we look at this graphic, sorry, it's a lot of graphic, but if you look at this graphic and you imagine that on the left comes all the job in your studio, and on the right side comes what actually is produced, what will end up in your portfolio. This schema about how to pick a job is the first way of sorting out what you're actually going to do. So let's say this is the first, it's not exactly a restriction, but it's the first filter. And then you start to you have the first meeting with your client. And I found it always super interesting, and we talk a lot with my friend about that, how much sometimes you, in the first meetings, you didn't start to design yet anything, you didn't start to research, but the first meeting will already indicate some very important design decision. So for example, let's imagine I'm doing a book production, and I know already that there is a low budget. They warn me from the start, it's very low budget. I will have to quickly figure out, okay, is this book part of a series, in which it means that I don't have the control on the format. Or if it's a magazine, I also don't have the control on the format. If I don't have the control on the format, I mean, I hope it's an economical format. So we all know an economical format means you can put as many spread possible in the offset plate or in the sheets of paper in order to have minimum waste of paper, and then it's an economical format. But if I don't have this discussion, because it's part of a series or it's a magazine and there is a certain format, then I will need it will have an influence on the type of paper I can choose, because if I can choose an economical format, I can save some money that I can reinject in certain paper. If I can't, maybe I will have to, or even worse, if it's a magazine and they tell me, hey, the print run is 6,000 copies and we cannot change anything about that, I'm going to end with a paper that is a cheap paper, and it's already, it means the format is decided, the paper is decided, it's already a lot of important design decisions. So I just found interesting how much very quickly in the beginning of a project, you can try, of course, to find your way around, right? But like a lot of important decisions will be taken. Of course, also printing methods, some are expensive, some not. Is there Pantone? Are we printing special ink? Are we binding it with simple glue, or should we sew every booklet? All of this will have a budget consequence. So I would say, taking again this graphic, now we are looking at the second filter. This now is everything we cannot produce or we can produce, and in the left part of the graphic comes what we will actually be working on. And now we can maybe talk about really specific situations. So format restriction. So this is a stickers. It's like a stickers that was designed by Cornel Windlin and Gilles Gavier. I don't know exactly when. I would say 1990, but maybe I'm completely wrong. Something like that, I guess. And it was meant to be the way of labeling all the most beautiful Swiss books. You had the exhibition here not long ago, so every book that got the prize were labeled with the most beautiful Swiss book stickers. And then in 2020, I think it was, the Federal Office of Culture in Switzerland organized a contest to redesign the stickers. So there was Norm, there was me, and I cannot remember the third one. So this tells you already a lot about the design scene in Switzerland. We literally organized a contest to design a stickers. And actually, I can't believe I'm presenting a stickers in this lecture, but it ended up being an important project, at least to me. So first restriction was the format. I knew that the format is 4.5 centimeters diameter, so it's a circle. And I started to make lots of research, because the second restriction outside the format was that it had to contain 5 languages. So we speak 4 languages in Switzerland. We speak French, German, Italian. I mean, when I say we, like I only speak very well French, that's it. But supposedly speak, French, German, Italian, and a very special language called Romanche. But then English is very often used to kind of become this translation language in between region, area. So they asked me to set up 5 language in 4.5 centimeter stickers. So I did loads of tests, and then I end up with the conclusion that this was the system that made the most sense. So to separate these stickers in zone per language, and this zone would create a cross, and this cross would be a reference to the cross we have on our flag, the Switzerland cross. But then they came with a new restriction, which was that they would not allow me to hyphenate words, which is okay in English, but in German is a nightmare. So, like for example, Literaturpreise. I mean, and that's nothing. It's like, I'm sure there is way longer, but that's the one I see here. So here it looks easy, but with the cross in the background, it was a bit a challenge. So I had to make micro adjustment that hopefully we cannot see. I hope you don't see them, but sometimes the cross is slightly getting larger, sometimes the type size is smaller, and all of this knowing that I wanted to hot print it with a foil, which means I also have a certain restriction of size that are printable. So this is typically, by the way, a work I like. This kind of micro adjustment, I love to do that. I really see it as a game or a challenge. So once I found something that worked, I basically divided those stickers in 2 parts, and the idea was to print them like overlapping each other. One being printed on a very glossy silver foil, and one being printed on a matte silver foil. So now, for example, that's mostly how you see it. I don't know if you paid attention to the stickers during the exhibition. Probably not. Only, I don't know, I care because I designed it, but maybe it's just, not something that obvious. But what I like is that I like this optical effect. So very often you see the cross very contrasted, like you see here on picture. But depending how the light shine on the stickers, you would also see a plain silver circle with typographic cross in it. And I thought this was an interesting optical effect. And then they kind of asked me to develop from that diploma. So basically just the sleeve that you receive whenever you will get any prize in Switzerland, like an art design prize, art award prize, a design award prize, music award, etc., etc. You get a sleeve inside. It's like an A5 sleeve. Inside is the diploma folded, and then I would, of course, play around this cross that I created. And in that case, I completed the cross in some kind of grid, and I play with this grid inside and outside to create the hierarchy of information. And you have to imagine, like each prize, so the design prize, art prize, etc., they have their own designer. Every 3rd year they change the designer, but usually there is a special designer that will take care of the poster of the Swiss Design Award, for example. And this is not touched by this. That's why they wanted to have some kind of branding for all the awards. And I'm happy because the font that I use, which is Unica Medium, became kind of a branding font for every time we want to talk about those prizes without talking about the specific one. So they asked me to do also signage for the exhibition because, for example, in Art Basel, there is the design exhibition is in the same times than the art exhibition, so they didn't want this to be affected by the identity around them, but have like some kind of middle ground. So I'm working now on signage project, and I use Unica in many different contexts. And for example, this was this was, for example, a signage system I installed in the lift, and so it's like a very old industrial lift. So I placed all the name of every body that were part of the organization of the exhibition, so that with the lift and the fact that it's like very slow, very industrial, it's like a trailer of a movie in a way. So I'm really like playing around now with this long branding font, let's say, and language. This is another project that was also let's say, affected by a format restriction because, I mean, I will tell you because, why in a second, but I could tell you, I could speak the whole evening about this project because it's the first book that I lay out and wrote. And I mean, when I say wrote, I led a few conversations and and I retranscribe every conversation. It's basically, it all started during a talk from François Rappeau. Maybe you know his work. He's a famous type designer in Switzerland. And he was a teacher when I was studying at ECAL. And once I was following a talk and there was like the mention Bob's Graphic, but he didn't talk about that. It was just written Bob's Graphic. And I knew Bobst because Bobst was like the company where my father used to work all his life. And it's like a very industrial company. I think even in the text that I sent for Elisava, I'm mentioning this somehow. But yeah, I literally spent time when I was young in packaging fair, because basically they are creating machines that create packaging, that fold packaging. So I was very intrigued to hear about Bob's Graphic, and I didn't know what it was. So I asked my father, and he said that, yes, in the 70s, they had this thing, they were trying to make typefaces, but he doesn't know more. And I was like, wait, this is now we're talking about what interests me, what typefaces. So he gave me the contact of like one of the director of Bob's during that time. And I went to meet him. He was like at that point a very old man. And he showed me like a stack of amazing catalog. And they were really amazing. Not necessarily beautiful. They were really, you would absolutely feel the time, of the 70s. But it was super interesting to see that Bob's Graphic was a subcategory of this company, this packaging company, and they were basically trying to create phototype setting machine. So they somehow got lucky enough to be surrounded by pioneers. They really had the inventor of phototype. They had very good type designers such as Team 77. I mean, they were not in-house, but they were collaborating with them. They are the one that draw Unica. So they were really good type designer. And yeah, basically they also had good engineer. They were really surrounded with great people, and it didn't work. If you were interested why, you can have a look at the book, but it was a huge fail. And since it's not, I don't know, it's like a very industrial company, they maybe didn't see the potential of telling this story, so they basically throw away almost the whole archive, or at least a huge part of it, and didn't feel the need to tell the story. So I wanted to basically tell the story, and that's what this book is doing. You see also like a contest that was organized, which was also very new to organize type contest during that time. And you see, for example, this is like the type of also picture I show. So this also tells you about that time. They were like drawing letters at a certain height. So for a layout, they would scale down this layout. So here you really see it on the grass. I don't know if that's if you see it well, but basically this is the scale, and I found it so interesting to see how time obviously has changed. And then they were like also creating some kind of artistic direction with this machinery they were creating. This one I love also. It's kind of like machine in the cloud. I found it super beautiful. So when I was trying to design this book, first I thought, okay, I need to tell this story. But then I didn't have funding. I didn't have anything to do this book. But once ECAL, with François Rappeau, with the publisher Trieste Verlag, under the direction of David Fornari at ECAL, contacted me and proposed me to do a research project and to actually make this book. But they already had a book, one research project that was published before, so they had the format. So this is, you see, it was a long introduction for, I tried to be short, but it was a long introduction. But they gave me a specific format, and I was really struggling with this format. I really thought it felt so wrong to extract image from those beautiful brochures and re-inject them in a random layout. Every move I would try to do in terms of design felt really wrong. So what I decided to do was just to take the spread, scale them down, and get rid of the text and the all graphic element, all color system. That's it. Like, it's a very simple move, but it makes that like the sequence really give the feeling. I mean, each spread are completely different. Like some student of mine came and said like, we don't understand the grid. Can you tell us? I was like, there is no grid. Like there's like margin change, like gutter change, everything changed, which is crazy for me because I love grid system. I love when things are really strict. But yeah, in that case, it wasn't, and I felt yes, it's in the wrong format. So we could say that the step even further would really be to keep everything the same. But I had this restriction of format, and I felt it still gives the feeling that you're discovering the archive like I did discover it. And I think this was important for me. On the right side, you see the preface, which like introduction, which is written by François Rappeau, who was the man that mentioned box graphic for the first time. So it was important for me that he's responsible to write the preface of the book. And then years later, I came at ECAL to give my class, and I saw that because it was printed there, the book, I saw that somehow like some student for a workshop, they started to make design object with my book. And I thought, what's happening? What is that? But it was, it was just interesting. And before I talk about these stickers that became a diploma, that then became this signage, a project. And for Bob's, this was, for me, I wanted to tell this story, and I did it. And years later, so I don't remember when we printed the book, to be honest, but in summer 2022, so actually, not this summer, the one before, David Keshavji from Maximage and me were looking at the material, and we saw this image that was basically on the screen of this machine, EuroCAD. It's one of the Bob's machine. So I'm zooming in a bit. You see, it has like a grid made out of dot, and then there is like this kind of dot matrix font on top that is basically fusionating with the grid. You see, like if you focus on the letter X, for example, you see that the two sides of dots are melting into each other. And we thought, wow, that's nice. Like it would be cool to do a typeface out of it. So that's what I did in 2022. So here, I mean, I'm not even talking restriction. You get it. It's like the grid is so big. Like it's definitely a challenge to find ways to represent all letters. And I remember at this point I was very pregnant when I did this font. And David Keshavji, who is who started MaxiTab, was really asking me like, well, could we release it the day you give birth? And I was like, sure, why not? And then he was like, well, and how about we give the typeface the name of your daughter? Because at this point I already picked the name of my daughter, but I was like, that's not a font name. I know it doesn't sound like a nice font name. And he was like, okay, did you consider a second name? And I was like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. So what I've done is I had to make everything ready, because obviously the day I will give birth, I won't be in the mood to be on my computer and release a typeface. So I had to find a bit a small trick. So what I've done is, since it was all about screen, I imagined that we were looking at screen in an airport. And I said, okay, I'm preparing the specimen for your website. And then I will just give you, I will just send you a message when she's born, and you replace my design. You just replace the date, the time she's born, and the statue is arrived. And what I didn't tell, I did tell David, but I didn't tell everyone that Miami International Airport, the reduction is Mia, and this was my daughter's name. So it was like, but actually I have to say, like, except my very close friend, I think no one got it. So it was, I thought it was obvious, but it wasn't. No one understood it. So yeah, this was a typeface. And to continue a bit on the format topic, this is a poster I did not long ago. As you can see, the exhibition was ended on the 7th of January, so quite recently. It was an exhibition at the Museum für Gestaltung in Zurich, so the Museum of Design. And it was an exhibition from a textile designer called Claudia Caviezel. And Claudia Caviezel she has a very interesting way of working. She's super intuitive in her way of working, and basically she will experiment with ink and different technique, and then she will do something and crop in it, and then scale it up, and then do something else. So it's really a constant moving material. So for her, it made absolutely no sense to just pick an image and decide that, okay, this is the image of your poster, because it would be too static for her way of working. So what I decided to do is to basically find a way of working in which the poster will look all quite different or slightly different. So I took two images of her work. This is what you see here on the left side. So two different images. Then I transformed them in only one color. And then I printed in silkscreen one orange background. And then I printed two different gradients, so two iris. I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure you know what the iris is. It's this gradient that you do directly while printing the gradient in silkscreen. You just put the ink on the frame and you print it. And what's interesting is that you can make your gradient evolve during the printing process. So I told the printer, okay, I want a maximum difference. I want sometimes the yellow to go, for example, all the way in the middle, but the same, at some point I want the green to go all the way down, maybe sometimes the yellow completely disappear. Like, I really wanted them to move the gradient as much as they could. And basically the type come between those two gradients. And yeah, unfortunately, since it was quite recent, I didn't gather yet lots of different picture of the poster, but basically in the street you could see that they were all different, and for me this was a way of kind of showing more something closer to her own process of working. And I'm just talking about format because we thought it would be interesting to, during this printing process, when the poster are very different, to always put some aside and then to cut them and make them the cover of the this catalog exhibition. I was not the graphic designer of the catalog. It was Marcus Vicky, but we were in contact, and we basically organized this cover so that this would be reused. And now there was no budget restriction, or I mean there was one, but it was not a strong one. It was not the reason why we did this cover, but it could have been. Talking about the discussion we had at the beginning about this meeting, this is typically something I could imagine doing. If there is budget restriction, how can we use one support in different ways? Now I will talk about a project where there was a context restriction. So as we all went through COVID, right? This really terrible, annoying time. And I remember being in my room and also talking with a lot of friends and being a little bit afraid of my studio, because at the end I do a lot of poster for exhibition, lots of poster for festival, and whenever it's a book, it's often because an exhibition is coming. So I saw a lot of artists in Zurich that had their book being cancelled, same for big event. So we were all wondering how it will be, and especially how long it will last. But then I had a good surprise to see that we can get job from COVID. So this was what happened with PhotoWorks. It's like a festival of photography in Bristol. And basically they had to cancel their festival, obviously. So they thought, okay, let's do a festival in a box. Let's make a box that contain everything we would have exhibited there. So this was the unfolded box that you see here. And it had to contain different photography piece, or like artist piece. And for this, I had to think of what object can I propose to the artist that end up all being nicely folded in an A5, because the box was a bit larger than A5. So I proposed them either they could print a poster or a triptych or a leporello. And then from there, this was like the restriction I gave them, but then from there they were very free to discuss with me what layout fit to them, their design, and how they would have done it if they were able to print their picture, to produce the print of their picture in the festival. First of all, there was a very interesting discussion going on with the photographer. And then we thought, okay, what else would we find in this festival? Obviously, there would be, next to each art piece, there would be the kind of like small explanation, how do you call that, cartel? So, sorry, I don't have the name in English right now. But like the small explanation that comes next to an art piece. So for this, I printed this leporello and I perforated it in two different directions, vertically and horizontally. And then the image fitting the text on the background, so that once you put like the image on the wall, you can also put the explanation with it on the bottom right. And then there was also the equivalent of what would have been a catalog in the exhibition. And then also there was possibilities of possible scenography scenario. And this, I printed it in the back of the box. So it was basically 3 possible scenarios how to display those art pieces. And it was I remember it was, kind of a sad time, this lockdown. But I was like hanging out on my phone on Instagram, and from time to time I would see like someone tagging me and who did like the exhibition in his garden or things like that. And it always made me very, very happy. So yeah, this was a fun project, and in a context of restriction, it was cool to see that maybe it also bring job in a way. And now I think we could open a new chapter, which is when we work with our own restriction. So this is like going in the direction of the small part of the interview from Manuel Krebs that I read. That's what they do, right? They work with their own restriction, but often they set restriction or like system. For example, in their case, they love to work with millimeters, and they're very precise and strict about that. So they don't, on InDesign you have different unit system, you have the point system, but you have the millimeter system. They only focus on millimeter system. So for them, it's okay if a typeface is, I don't know, 4.8 or 12 point something, but it has to be perfect millimeters numbers. So 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters, 7 millimeters, that's what matters for them. When I was working there, they would not allow comma in millimeters in any document. This was like, was crazy for them. For me, I like to work with restriction, but it can also change from one project to the other. I like to make the restriction fit a certain project, and then I change my rules for another project. So this, for example, was the rules that I created for a book that was talking about geography, the geography in Switzerland. And as you see, I don't know if it's very visible, but on the top you see the map of Switzerland. And the way these are like they connect area with a number, and it's kind of like the official way of dividing the space of the land from the topographic service of Switzerland. So I took this grid and I completed inside the grid, and then I applied parameters. So for example, the latitude was corresponding to the number of columns of my document. Then the longitude was corresponding with the size of text, and then the altitude of the place was corresponding to the width of the column. So it made that when you were looking at the book and browsing through the book, like your layout would modulate in function of where you were in Switzerland in the book. So this was my goal, and it was like really an interesting challenge to try again and again different parameters, and basically try a number of possibilities in order to find the parameters that would work. And I think this project has been also almost, first it has been made manually, which makes no sense at all. Now I would of course do a script, but I have never been good in programming, almost never. I'm trying to get into it, but it's not my thing. But now I realize we can script with ChatGPT. It's very easy. So I'm like, a lot of possibilities are offering to me now. Let's see how I use them. But this project has been almost a ghost, because then a lot of people came and wanted the same almost, or they were like, how can we parameter my layout? And sometimes it was very difficult because in that case I had tons of content, I had data, I had table, I had so many information to treat. But sometimes I try to use this in a very more like minimal way. So for example, this was a book from a photographer, and his book was about borders, and they were we decided to classify the picture in function of which border were northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, and then it would just make that the image was moving from top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. So it's very minimalist, but it kind of worked. When we tried it, we looked at the sequence of the book, and it again gave this nice organic effect. Not too, I mean, it is quite boring. It's like quite, yeah, I don't know, maybe a bit stiff, but it still works. So this was, let's say, another way of using parameters in design. And then I worked on this catalog for Dia. Maybe you know Dia Studio. They are known for like animating font type, and they are originally they are American, and they had their studio in New York, and that's where I met them actually. When I arrived in this residency in New York, they told us that actually it was really the last year that this residency program happened. So they were a bit unorganized, and they were like, oh, actually you don't have studio anymore, because the deal is that you get a flat, a studio, and money to live there, which is great. But they were like, so pick the studio wherever you want to work. And I had no idea. I didn't know this design scene in New York. It's actually a very, it's special scene. It's very, very different than the one in Switzerland. But somehow I got to know Dia, and then they generously proposed to offer like one of their desks. So I worked for them, and their dream kind of was to move to Switzerland, or not to move there, but to know a bit more about Europe design, Switzerland, or actually Spain, France. They were really triggered and interested by our design scene. So that's what they did years later, and then they started to get a lot of job in the area, and then they got this catalog for Chaumont. So Chaumont is this design fair in France. Maybe you know it. It's like I mean, if you don't, you should apply with your poster there. But Dia are not specialized in the print project. They are actually specialized in animation. So, for example, this is one of the animation they did for this festival, and you can see that the type is obviously moving. They program something to play with the image, etc. And they wanted to fill this in the catalog, but we're talking about static object. So what I started to work on was how to use parameters again, and how to basically use systems so that we will fill this in the layout. So first I incorporated the notes inside the text. So you see they are in two different sizes. So instead of having them at the end of the text, or instead of having them at the bottom of the page, they are really mixed inside the text, which create this kind of vibration, which to me also work with their animation. But then I also paid attention to the navigation system, and I basically tried to create a system in which, when we would browse, the navigation would move almost the same way than the animation. So I looked and I first create categories, so the name of the designer or the name of the person writing the text, the client for which the poster was made, or the title of the text, the format, the printing technique, the year, the page number, the country. And then I made sure, of course, that those were for me like module. Then in between those modules, I had to, of course, make sure that we were always looking at the same size. And then the rules was very simple. I just forced it to be aligned at the top of the page and at the bottom, and then it kind of create this organic navigation in which like the spacing can really move, like it can be open and close and open and close. And again, once you browse, I don't know if it's maybe a bit too generous to say it works like that, but you know those kind of kids book where you can almost see a small animation. That's the feeling I was actually hoping to have with the navigation system. So there I thought, yeah, it was kind of interesting also to see how much parameters are, yeah, trying to mimic something also about like our static way of designing. So this was like some kind of archive project. It's a project that I did during this residency in New York. So when I arrived there, everyone told me, hey, you're never going to work in New York. Like, it's impossible. It's like such a dangerous city. Like, impossible to be productive there. You will do the residency, you will end up not doing anything. And I knew that it's actually really dangerous. So I thought, okay, let's just set a small system, the most basic system. So here, nothing crazy in terms of layout. The layout is just divided by 6 square in a newspaper format, 12 in the spread. But basically, my system was just to say, okay, I'm going to, every morning, in always the same time frame, I'm going to walk around, always chase IDs. Anything can be an ID, like handwriting can become a typeface, like small IDs. And then in the afternoon, I will produce content and I will archive it, because I feel we're in a time where, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are doing the same than me. We take tons of pictures and then they are like just completely lost in our camera roll and in your feed, and we just never look at them anymore. But actually, when you take those pictures, you're thinking, oh, I have to use it at some point. It's such a brilliant idea. So I thought, okay, let's make an archive project of everything I found interesting. But it was like, it was very basic, because of course, some days you don't find amazing idea, but sometimes like you think, okay, this type, handwriting type, I found it interesting. I want to actually try to develop it as a headline font. Or here, for example, here are like few features that I particularly love. So here on the left, you see 2T, 2 capital T, and engraved, and one is a bit higher to avoid like a ligature. And I think it's so nice, but you just don't see it in the layout today. Or in the middle, you have like accents that are aligned to the X height, for example, the X height of the type. And or like an interesting font, or like, yeah, just again, handwriting thing. So then I would always like develop a small visual or something that summarize what I've seen and how to use it. And then I thought, brilliant, now I print this newspaper. First of all, this was my way of being productive in New York, because at this point in my studio, I didn't get that much job at that point. As it started, but it was still minimal. And then I thought it's like creating an archive that I can use later. But to be honest, I never use it. I think I never opened this newspaper once after that. Except for these specific features. So this is not something I saw in the street. It's something I saw in a book, but during that time. And it's basically that instead of making an hyphenation in a text, you could reduce the end of the word instead of cutting the word. And I thought, that's interesting. Like, actually, why are we setting text block without ever questioning why we do it a certain way? And that make me come to program restriction, because I'm especially interested to. I'm not someone. I think if I compare myself to a lot of other friends, I'm not someone who will, I don't know, experiment a lot with different program, or I have friends that are good in programming, so they keep making their own platform. I'm not good at this. I mean, I can be, but I need to work with someone. I'm not good at this. So my thing are InDesign and now a bit Figma. These are like the thing I can handle. I mean, of course, Photoshop, Illustrator, but I'm not very good at experimenting with program. And then I thought it's crazy because if you look at the first version of InDesign or even a previous version 10 years ago, they didn't change that much. I mean, now we see a big switch, right, with the AI coming. Now things start to move. But it's quite crazy when you're a bit, I don't want to use this word, but nerdy, or you like this kind of specific thing about, type features, like the one I just mentioned with hyphenation. There is nothing that are offered to us. There is, okay, do you want to align your block left, right, or center? And do you want hyphenation or not? That's more or less it. Maybe you can move the punctuation out, but basically, if you want to do things, you need to script them, which is something, again, that I thought is not for me until I saw that ChatGPT can script for me. But looking again at this image, I thought, okay, I need to see if there is more. So I made a small research on manuscript. So now we are switching to Arabic and Hebrew font in that specific case. So you have to imagine that the end of the block is on the left side and not on the right side. So for example, if you look at the top, the image on the top right, the end of the block, they extend the last glyph. They just extend the last glyph in order to have your block justify. In the middle top, they do something super strange. They do the preview of so the last letter on the second line is the preview of the first, is the first letter you see on the third line. You know what I mean? It's like a small preview. And then on the bottom left, this is something you see a lot in the Quran, for example. They finish with a nice curve, they finish sentence in the margin, which is super beautiful. I don't know, we should absolutely lay out this in a whole, for a whole book. On the top left, it's very much, it's what we would do if we write any birthday card, like you just condense the last word. But then, I don't show everything here. I found a lot of example with explanation, and I realized that there is interesting historical model that could be used. So I decided to work with programmers to script all of it, and so now I'm working on a series of script where we would have alternative layout solution, and I started to do that just for my own interest. So for example, here on the bottom left, it's kind of almost a monospace applied to words. So instead of having a single width per letters, you have it per words. It takes the width of the first words and it applies it to the whole block. Or on the middle left, you see this is also something now. It looks with a modern glyph. It's a little bit strange, but there was sometimes like a certain glyph that were repeated again in order to finish the text block. Or on the bottom right, they would repeat the last letters. This is also something you see in some manuscript. So all of those models, I thought they were so interesting. Now I think this is the one you saw, extending the last words. This is extending the last letters. And this is like a bit the new path I'm working on, is to actually, instead of cutting the word, it's just out of the margin. And the one on the bottom right are the one you find in the Quran, right? Or often actually in the Quran. So talking about those program restriction, I feel this for me is a big topic, to realize that we are that in all of the restriction I talked so far, I feel like they are positive. I feel like when you have a budget restriction, it can help you. It can always help you figure out new idea. The program restriction are for me the most toxic, the one that you just go with what you have, but actually it would really be interesting to rethink them. And while I was just experimenting without knowing where I was going with this script, I saw that it's very recent, but Adobe InDesign are now um, um, authorizing plugin. This is very new. So the Creative Cloud will allow for any of you to upload your own plugin, and then you can also download plugin from other people. So in case this interests you, there will be from next summer, I don't know how I will call it, but a Giliane Cachin plugin with all of this. And I think I'm going to put it for free because I just found it interesting, and maybe this could become possible alternative layout option when you're laying out any book or publication. And now I would like to talk about two different type of support, like media, so poster and type specimen. So for these, I feel these are the support where I need the most freedom. In my practice, I feel these are like the one I handle the least restriction, but I need a frame, and often it's me who put the frame of work. So poster. This was a poster I designed for the QE Jazz Festival. It's a jazz festival in Switzerland. I designed it with a friend of mine, Alice Franchetti. And basically, if there is anything that comes to the mind of Swiss people when they think of this festival, is the place. The place is super beautiful. It's just, and then I started to zoom in and out, and I figured out, okay, at what scale I found the illustration to be the nicest, which was, I don't remember exactly, but it was like that scale. And then with my friend Alice, we cropped in this map forever. I think like it was also one of our first project. I mean, not first project in design, but first project in our studio, in our career. So we were very scared to have our first poster in town. So we are laughing together when I think of the time we spent cropping in the map and just figuring out what illustration we think are really saying or showing something of music, and just have a nice tension. This is also a big topic in Swiss design, like the tension in a poster or the tension in a page. So that's basically it. We just selected part of the map, but we had this design project. We knew that we were able to do the festival identity for 3 years. So we thought it would be interesting to zoom slowly inside the town. So first we were looking at those maps, general maps of the landscape. And then the year after we said, okay, let's zoom in now and let's look at the road. So we look at the road where the festival is happening. Then we vectorize the place. And I don't know if you noticed, sorry, I go back, but there was like those dots, which was like the way of symbolizing notes, or like, this rhythm of jazz. So there we thought, okay, let's put like a raster of dots, and whenever the dot is crossing one of these lines, it stays, otherwise it disappears. And there was few versions of the poster in town, but basically this was the second year, like first the map of the landscape, then the street. And then for the third year, we thought, okay, let's zoom in even more, and let's end up in a room, in a concert room in a way. So we had like this perspective, this grid perspective, and this time the dots that you saw before, they were becoming like waves. They were like broken by the perspective. That's what you see hopefully a bit on the bottom left. They were really like deformed and broke in order to feel like the music inside the room. And then we printed this, and then it was locked down, and then the festival never happened. But fortunately, we printed it. I was like, I don't care. The poster is in town. I don't care. My job is done. And at this point, I think we are. Oh, this was in 2020. Yeah, I think it was around that moment. I was very happy with the way my studio was going and my practice in general. But I did feel frustration about all of this, all the side thing we have to do when we're designer, right? Like I felt it was so many discussions with printer, so many meetings, about budget, about things that were not exactly design, and I felt I was missing lacking a bit of creativity in a way. And I was just remembering me as a teenager or even a children, like drawing all the time. And I always felt like when I draw, there is something really a bit meditative almost. And I felt I was losing this a bit in my practice. So I was just waiting to find the job that would allow me to do basically a full freedom job without restriction. And this job came, and it was like an identity for RKC. RKC is a music club in the French part of Switzerland, and I felt the programmation changed a lot during the months. There was like they didn't have interesting material to use. They didn't have like photographer that comes. Like it's really they basically could not help me with content, and then I was like, okay, then how about we just write RKCs? Like I know it's the most simplest concept you can find, but how every month we write the word RKC, but maybe it become almost a game with the public of that goes usually to this concert room, because in some it would start to be quite tricky to read, and it's kind of like a challenge for them to figure out how to read it. And it made me so happy. There, like, if you compare it to other projects, it's really, the most basic, but I felt I needed to go through this identity to get, creative again, or at least to really have, like, it was my windows where I could breathe during my months in my studio, because I knew that every month I will have at some point 2 days on a poster, and I will just be able to enjoy myself a little bit. So that's what I did. I really work on lots of things, and of course I always made it fit more or less with the programmation. So I would listen to the artist coming, and just intuitively I would try to make it fit. So this is kind of a no restriction project, I must say, and I produce more and more. It was really an interesting time. And then they had their anniversary, their 30 years old anniversary. So they said they want to do a book with me, which we did. It's this one. So for this book, I had to really dig in the archive, their archive, where there was lots of flyers, lots of things. And then, of course, we thought, okay, I mean, we have to do something about this anniversary. We cannot, it would make no sense to continue this game, even though it felt amazing, but this game of just making like visual poster, we have to now make something special for the birthday. And as I was digging into this material, I felt it would be interesting to propose posters that are highlighting different part of this material in the archive. So here, for example, you see some flyers, and I mean, some I found horrible, some I found interesting. I don't know, it was really a bit a mix, but there is flyers, there is like backstage ticket, there is a poster, and my goal was to just analyze all of this material and basically propose to the people going to RKC to discover a little bit of their archive, but to really reuse it. And I think we are a bit in this time where we see a lot of textile designer who use material to do something new. We have to be sustainable, etc. So I thought, hey, how does that look in graphic design? So for example, for this backstage ticket, it's not that interesting, but when you zoom in, you see this interesting type there. And I thought, actually, I don't think it's an interesting type. I think it's probably that they try to print like a gray or a strange typeface, and it just end up being printed like this. I don't think it's a type. But I felt like the letters are so beautiful. So I didn't have K and C, but I had the idea of what the R could look like. So I just developed the 2 letters missing. And then I saw this image of Puff Daddy with his tattoo in the front head, and I thought, okay, let's make a poster with this. So I felt like the type mixed with the image was very interesting, because it will really like complete the eye of Puff Daddy, and even like the mouth, it would like just mix perfectly, in my opinion. So I felt it's an interesting way to discover just element of the archive, even though you would, I mean, the picture of Pavadi, you would of course recognize it, but the type, you will not know where it comes from. But for me, it was really interesting to reuse material. Here, the flyers, it was also, yeah, I of course could not spend hours in the archive, so I had to be quite efficient. And here I was just about to not look at these flyers on the left, which I thought was not nice. But then I realized it's kind of like a singing, screaming mouse, and it's quite nice. So I made a poster with this. Or here, the image on the top left is like just actually a super small element that was on the top left of a poster. But then this became the main visual of the poster. So yeah, we built for a year. We built image playing around with this archive. And so there I feel, this is a bit what I tried to express before, I feel for poster, I need to feel this freedom, but I need to set up a frame. So in that case, for QE, the frame was the zoom in the geography. Here, the frame was the archive. So here is the frame, but then I play around in a very free way. And the other type of support with which I feel I can play, that I can also be quite free, or that I need to be, is type specimen. So this became a big thing in my practice. I don't know if it will end soon or if it will just continue like that, but it's very funny to see that, it's not even so much a category in graphic design to do design of type specimen, but somehow it ended that a lot of people ask me to do that. And I really love it. I found it so interesting because it's really, about how to actually present a product, because a typeface is a product. So it's really a way of advertising product. And it all started in New York again with Johannes Breyer, which you also had for a lecture, I've heard, but from Dynamo. So yeah, I told you a little bit about my background before. So I moved to Berlin and I got to know Johannes. And then I told him about this residency, and he said, "Oh, I also want to come to New York." And he came, and then he asked me, "Do you want to design or specimen, or a printed specimen?" And I was very scared because at this point my studio just started, and I don't know. I knew that they already had a name, Dynamo, and I felt so terrified to do anything for them. And I thought, okay, let's start without design. Let's start just organizing content. So, what is a type specimen? A type specimen is an element that you can print or you can have online, and the goal is to sell a product, to sell a typeface. So in order to sell a product, you need to show what is this product and what does this product contain. So I thought, let's first organize the glyph map, like just every single glyph that are part of this typeface in category that makes sense. So that's what you see here on the top. I just simply made category about like the different accent, the different open type features, everything we know are in a typeface. Sorry, and then why I'm showing this project and what I found interesting is that after organizing this content, I realized that the design was done. That technically it's very strange to start like designing this, that finally what we want is clarity. We want to bring a clarity in a product. We want to show what there is. But in terms of design for the glyph map, I don't need to necessarily start to add effect or colors, because if you're able to divide your content and to bring this clarity, for me, the design part is almost finished, and they absolutely agree with it. So of course there is type size that are decided. This is a strong design decision, but in general, I feel this is something that I'm particularly interested in, and I like the idea that when we talk with a friend that are also designer, we all came to design for a certain reason, but they're all quite different, the reason. Like I know some friends, they came because I don't know, they looked at books with their parents, or their parents had this great collection of books, and they really swam in this world in order to become a designer. And for other people, it was through graffiti. It was big thing also. Like okay, this idea of with a friend I was talking, and there was really this idea of having his intervention on something. So for him, making a logo that would then end up in the street was almost like a graffiti. I mean, he was a big graffiti guy, but like it was almost an intervention that would stay and stay there for quite some time. But for me, I felt this has never been about that. My parents never really brought me to museum. I mean, maybe they would kill me to hear that, like they probably did a bit, but it was not a thing. I was not in this cultural scene at all. They didn't even know what was an art school when I started art school. And for me, I know that I kept saying to my father that I want to draw machine, which makes no sense. I was probably just trying to imitate him in some way because he was engineer. But what I know is that what always interested me was those complex visual. I've always thought maps are beautiful, banknotes are beautiful, passport are beautiful, and what always obsessed me was really like the organization of element. And here I'm not saying it reached any level of passport design, nothing like that, but I like that just by organizing an element, the design is created, and it's not about a style. It's not about trying to make something a total approach or something. And this is basically something I felt I wanted to push, and I had a bit the occasion to do it in different ways. So as I said, I worked with Jonathan Harris on this website, and we worked a lot on specimen page and everything that the website could offer, and to make design proposal on also printed project, one actually still in the making, like a big extensive book about the story of Unica. And then I had the possibility to do a printed specimen for Selecta, which is a typeface from a friend, and it has been released at MaxiType. And they thought it was interesting that the designer of the typeface is not the one that will design the specimen, which I would agree. I think it's always interesting. And for this project, it was very special because they were about to release a grotesque, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure you must also have noticed that, but this in the few last years, it's not recent. I'm really even talking about, I don't know, since 10 years or more, I don't know. Everyone is trying to have their own grotesque. Every studio is trying to have their own tool with which they will work, and that will really define them. And I found it so hard to make the specimen of a grotesque because there is already so many, and it's just how do you advertise one more grotesque. But this one I thought was interesting because they see it as a study. They see it as like some kind of grotesque taking features from other grotesque, like kind of like the grotesque that summarize different features, that is the middle ground of every product in the market at the moment. So I thought, okay, let's do it, but then let's do it in a very total approach, and let's compare it with other grotesque inside the specimen. So I first had to ask MaxiType if they were ready to do that, because I don't know, if you draw your own grotesque, you're maybe not sure if you want to be compared to Antique or Unica, which are those, or Accurate, which are those huge big seller fonts. Maybe you're like, no, don't put me next to this. But they were okay. They were like, let's do it. It's like a research. So, for example, this grotesque has a nice features, which is that it has a fixed spacing. So when you set up a book in light, for example, and then you change it last minute in bold, it's not going to completely break your ragging. It's just, it will stay because the spacing adapts. So that's what you see here. For example, that's what I try to show on this page. Like on the top is like any grotesque if you change the cut, and on the bottom, this is the Selecta. So this was one type of graphics. And then I was really interested in the data. I wanted to really create lots of data to show different things. So here we are showing the width of each letters and how it changed from one typeface to the other. And then I made a mathematical calculation, like making an addition of each width of each letter divided by 26, the number of letters of the alphabet. Then it gives like this kind of middle width, and that's what you see on the circle on the right. It's like, okay, which grotesque are wider and which are more on the narrow side. Selecta and Reforma being very wide, and Unica being quite narrow. Or here, it's about the difference between each cut. So here it's interesting because I know that there is a bit a rule in, I don't know, that I've heard in Type Foundry, where they said like the difference between cuts, so bold, light, regular, should not be perfectly like a diagonal. It should more be a curve. And then it was interesting to see who is actually following this and then to verify. But there, for example, the black one being selected, I realized that they have this curve, but also not super precise. So we had to also be okay to sell the product as it was. And then here we're trying to show different things. So here the top left is a schema to show the different contrasts. So the difference between a vertical stem and an horizontal one. On the bottom, it shows the difference between X height and cap height, like how, like the main proportion of the font. And then here was to show the ending. How does the ending works in different typefaces? And yeah, basically we create this specimen for Selecta like that. And for me, it was very interesting to create all of these visual. And yeah, I wanted to end my lecture with this project because talking about all of this restriction and going to a project where I had a lot of restriction. There, I didn't have a lot, maybe a budget one this time, but nothing else. And it was really interesting to be able to create all of this content. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Giliane? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to break the ice?
Everything was clear, no question.
Maybe, well, first of all, thanks for the talk.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Tight on the order languages.
Actually, it's a very interesting question. Now I'm trying to remember if I had the freedom, but I'm pretty sure this was discussed during meetings. Let me think. Yes, I think this was discussed, and it's like complete politics. It's really the Italian, I think, now ends in the middle, and I think it's also they are trying to give more space to this language because, like, the design scene in the German part of Switzerland is so strong. Same in the French part, a little bit. Not that it's less strong in the Italian part, but since the Italian part is smaller, it's obviously less present in contest or things like that. And I think it's a problem for them, or they really try to represent this part of Switzerland. And I'm pretty sure that they were also happy to end up having the Italian in the middle for this reason. I mean, I know that I remember having discussion, but it was not my design decision. It was really with the team that we discussed that. But that's interesting. I think this. I remember the discussion about the Italian language. For the rest, it's very blurred. I cannot remember. Good question.
More questions?
This is a kind of a simple question, but I'm curious if you have any like dream project.
Yeah, that's. I think I have one, but I have a very little hope. So my dream project is a banknote. I would love. I know that they often in Switzerland they organize banknotes contest, and I would love to design that. But they changed it not long ago. I mean, a few years ago already. But now looking at our current, our crypto money and everything, I'm not sure there will be new banknotes. So I could imagine that it's the end of it. And I'm like, oh no, I hope there will be one more contest that I can participate in. But it looked like, I mean, my wild guess would be that it's the end of money in a physical way soon.
Another question? Feels that they are too shy to.
I understand.
Okay, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Giliane.
Thanks a lot.